All right, guys, I think we're going to get started with our next presentation. It's my pleasure to introduce Maria Redmond, and she works for the Office of Energy and Innovation. Is that right?
Yep.
All right. A lot of times, you know, we're tasked with getting a lot of things done, a lot of projects, and we may not always have the budget. So whenever we can find any morsel, any nugget of money, that's a great thing. And so Maria here, she's going to talk to us about what grants exist out there and how we can get these projects done. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Maria.
Great, thank you. Hi, everyone, and welcome, and thank you for having me today. If you don't know who I am, Maria Redmond, Director of the Office of Energy Innovation. I've worked for the state of Wisconsin for 18 years in energy, primarily in the transportation fuels arena. I was appointed, not appointed, I was hired as a director of our office in 2015, and so I got to learn about way more than transportation. So I'm by no means an expert or an engineer or anything like that. My background, I graduated from UW-Madison with a degree in psychology. So a lot of the things that I approach when I talk to people about energy is behavior modification. That's what it's about. So I'm happy. We have a long time together, an hour. I was like, wow, we have a long time together. So I am pleased to answer any questions you may have as I move along through the presentation. I was asked to come speak today about resources and grants and funding. How many of you have really tight budgets? Yeah. So do we. Our office is primarily federally funded. And we have limited amount of funding that we can push out, but we have great opportunity to work with folks like you and have these conversations. And I actually didn't know that your organization existed until I was invited to come. So I really think this is a great opportunity to engage and to start a really good relationship and collaboration and be able to connect you with our subject matter experts in our office and our network of people that we work with. So I'm just going to jump right in. I really want to give you a good background on our work and what we do at the Office of Energy Innovation, and then talk about some of our programs and initiatives that we work on. And then I'm going to show you a couple sample pieces that we've put together. I will not be able to explain them. Again, I'm not an engineer, and I don't know all of the data, but I want to give you a sample of some of the products that we've put together and some work that we have done for other communities so that you can kind of see the data that we have access to and the things that we can provide. So please don't ask me any really, really deep, specific questions. I can just go over the highlights and then I'll refer you over to the right folks. But the Office of Energy Innovation, really our job is to secure Wisconsin's energy future, and we look at the environment, the economy. We bring in federal funding for a lot of initiatives. Energy touches everyone. We have the cooling here today. We have lights. You were able to get in your car and come here. That's all energy that you have access to. And when you don't have access to it, you notice, right? So our job is to make sure that we have access to affordable energy, that we're not creating bigger problems in the environment and how we're using our energy, that we're thinking about our economy, our budget. I'm going to talk about that a bit, but our job, I have a really fun job because I can talk to you, we can talk about the projects you're working on, and we can direct our funding to meet your needs. And so I sometimes get introduced as having the checkbook. I don't have the checkbook, but I do have an opportunity to work and shift money where the need is great. And so, again, open communication and transportation is like in my blood. Transparency, collaboration, and teamwork, these are all the things that we're really trying to work towards, and these are our values, and that's why I'm here today. So our office is actually the State Energy Office, and so if you have heard of the State Energy Office, we've actually been around since the 70s in various shapes, sizes, forms, locations. I have actually moved 14 times in my service in state, based on budgets, based on administrations, both federal and governor administrations, because I think each administration comes in with a different agenda. And so I would say, if we serve whoever's sitting in the throne, for those Game of Thrones fans, actually have never seen an episode of that, so sorry if you were disappointed. But we are the designated state energy office. There are 56 state energy offices in the U.S. and territories, and I serve on the board of the National Association of State Energy Officials. So we get a great opportunity to connect with folks across the U.S. To see what they're working on, best practices, and bring those back to Wisconsin and be able to deploy great projects and you know, lessons learned, right? We learn from other people's mistakes, so, and then we also get to contribute to other people's work throughout the country. And so really, this is, I'm not gonna read this, this is just basically everything that we work on. Hopefully, you guys will get the slide deck after I'm done here, but we're located, our office is actually located in the Public Service Commission of Wisconsin. We moved out to the Public Service Commission from the Department of Administration, again, as part of a political biennial budget change. We moved out in 2015, and we've been there. It's been pretty good. We also have the Focus on Energy program that was connected to our office as well. So I have oversight of that program as well, and I'll talk to you a bit about it. How many people are familiar with the Focus on Energy program? Oh, easy, so I can just go right through all of that. But in the governor's executive budget, the current governor's executive budget, he does propose to move our office again and change the name to the Office of Sustainability and Clean Energy and move it over to the Department of Administration. As you know, we have a divided political system right now, and so the Joint Finance Committee redlined that out and said, no, we're not going to move them, and we're kind of like in between. But despite that fact, we're still moving forward with our projects. We still have our funding that we need to spend, and we still are doing great things. So it's not going to stop the work that we do. It just kind of changes, you know, if we do move, it sort of changes the framework of the work that we do. The governor has proposed, you know, carbon-free and carbon-neutral electricity generation, production, and use by 2050. If that goes into place, you know, kind of changes how we move forward with the work that we do. But until then, we're just moving forward and pushing funds out for projects that we've already committed to. So here's our big problem. Nick Nichols and La Crosse County, commissioned a study from the Center on Wisconsin Strategy to really look at how Wisconsin is consuming energy and the benefits that could come from producing 100% of our energy here, the health benefits and the economic benefits of the results of that, and how we could improve Wisconsin's economy. And through that discussion, oh my gosh, I forgot, I have to run out and get the books. The study itself used energy statistics that we collected from our office and distribute out to folks. Our Wisconsin Energy Statistics publication, which should be sitting right here, but is sitting in the trunk of my car. And I will bring some up for you guys if you want to take them with you. But basically, the study concluded that the state of Wisconsin itself is spending $19 billion on energy, and $14.4 billion of that is leaving the state. We are a net energy importer and a net money exporter when it comes to energy. That's a big problem. You all have tight budgets, right? If we could keep some of that money here in Wisconsin, that would alleviate some of our budgetary issues on so many different levels. And so the challenge is that we have no in-state fossil fuel production resources, and then we have a strong reliance on fossil fuels. And so how do we change that? There's many ways to change it. The study itself talked about conservation, energy efficiency. That's a really easy, you know, an easy thing to move towards. If you're more efficient, you're going to be saving money. I'll show you a couple of success stories related to that on projects we funded. Transitioning over to different types of fuels that we perhaps have. We have a ton of biomass here in the state. We have a lot of corn. We have a lot of soybeans. We have, you know, like we have timber, waste timber. We have just all of these opportunities. We have biogas production. A lot of our anaerobic digesters right now are flaring their methane, so we have a lot of potential to produce energy from renewables. It's just a matter of making it an economic case for it and making sure that we can do it economically right now, it just costs too much. Solar, for example, the cost of solar has gone down significantly, and there's a lot of interest in solar. You're seeing a lot of deployment of solar because it's a reasonable cost now. You can argue it more because you don't have a huge incremental cost and a huge cost to put it in as you had in the past, because there's some parity in costs now when it comes to building and construction. So I don't want to bore you too much with stats, but these are really important. So this is resource energy consumption, and this is the resources that we need to generate electricity here in the state, and it includes the energy content, so the BTUs of energy that we use, and this is based on coal, petroleum, nuclear, and renewable fuels. And if you see, the resource energy is pretty equally distributed in all of the sectors: transportation, residential, commercial, and industrial, and a little bit here. But if you look over by the type of fuel, we're still using a lot of coal, and we switched, a lot of the coal facilities have switched over to natural gas because of the clean burning, it's lower emissions. But we're still pretty heavily reliant on the petroleum, natural gas, and coal. So, our resources, this is what we are relying on to produce our electricity here in the state. Are there any questions so far? Okay, just don't fall asleep on me. All right, or to what you mates. And then, so this is our end-use energy consumption. So this is when you're driving up to your gas dispenser and you're putting fuel into your vehicle. This is the turning on the lights. So this is our end-use, where we're at with end-use. So if you see here, by economic sector, a lot of our end-use energy consumption is in transportation. That's why I'm always talking about transportation. A lot of it's in the industrial, and then you have a pretty fair share in residential and commercial. And then you look over by the type of fuel. Now, someone told me it's really confusing to call electricity as a fuel, but in this case, it's basically a source of energy. But again, petroleum is our highest consumption, and then natural gas, and then electricity. But the small portion, 5%, as renewables. Now, this is through 2015. So we've seen a lot of deployment of solar. We have some wind. We have biogas. That, with the increased deployment of solar here in the state, that 5% will increase. But we don't know by how much at this point, because we're collecting that data now. But it might not go up that much compared to what we're using. And then this is the last set of pie charts. But this, I think, is the big ticket item. What I mentioned is we spend $19.4 billion in energy. And if you look at where we're spending our energy by type of fuel, $9 billion of that is on petroleum. And then if you break that down even more by economic sector, $8 billion of that is in transportation. A large portion in residential and industrial, commercial. A lot of money on electricity. So there's a great opportunity to look at the transportation, efficiency in transportation. Shared mobility is a big discussion. You get more people in more cars, you have less cars on the road, right? Or you promote transit, get people to share rides, and you're using less petroleum. From the electricity perspective, you start looking at your overall energy consumption in your facilities, or your overall how much electricity you're using. If you're reducing the amount of load, that improves your that results in cost savings. So that's it's kind of a hard pill to swallow there, but we have a lot of opportunity to keep money here in the state, and so that's the big argument. I was in front of the legislature yesterday showing the same exact image to them, and when you share that number with folks, it's kind of eye-opening, and these are the policymakers, and we're talking about, in order to really make a change, we need funding, we need policy, and the right kind of policy. So I threw it back at them and said, you figure that out. Here are the numbers, you figure that out. So I think I was going to stick a picture in here, that's why it's all squished up, so I apologize for that. But our office has provided a lot of funding throughout the years for communities, and I just wanted to give you sort of a highlight of the things that we've done. We had a Clean Energy Manufacturing Revolving Loan Fund, and that money actually is revolving back into a grant program, the Energy Innovation Grant Program, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But these went to manufacturers for energy efficiency retooling plans, and a couple other energy efficiency related measures at manufacturing facilities. But I think the key to that is that we're getting the money back, and now it's going out in grants to political subdivisions, hospitals, schools, universities, and manufacturers too. But I'll get into more details about the specifics. We had an energy efficiency conservation block grant fund during the stimulus period, which was $11.7 million. We recruited in 2007 to 2010, we were recruiting energy independent communities under the Doyle administration. So a lot of communities have resolutions of 25 by 25, renewable energy by 2025, or 25, a reduction of their energy by 2025. The resolutions are a little bit different for each community, but the idea is reducing energy consumption, transitioning over to different types of energy use. And so we're at more than 155, I think we're near, in between 155, 160 communities. And I'll talk a little bit more about what we're doing with those communities now in a few minutes. Clean Transportation Program was a competitive program that Wisconsin received the highest amount in the United States, $15 million to deploy advanced vehicle technology and alternative fuels in fleets throughout the state, both public and private fleets. We also are applying for competitive grants from the Vehicle Technologies Office, the State Energy Program, and I will talk about some of those as well. And then over the last few years with stimulus funding, we were able to secure about $115 million in funding, and most of that is passed through. So most of the federal funding that we receive, we're really good grant writers, and so we are able, I myself have been involved in about $80 million worth of grants and applications from the federal government, and we apply for them and then we pass a majority of that funding through to partners. So partnership is a really big deal. Oh, okay. I think this is it. This is the same slide, but it looks nice. So what happens when you do a presentation like at 12:30? So again, we've had a lot of successful projects in the public sector, and I know that's where you guys are working and what you're likely most interested in. So $1.2 million in grants for communities for planning and implementation. We think it's really important to plan. One of the things is, how do you go to your boards and tell them that a project is a good idea if you haven't planned for it? And so we're willing to put in money for you to plan and to look at your data and help you analyze your data so that you can see what your portfolio looks like and the best measures to implement and the timelines and kind of helping you along the way. Some communities are further along than others, and so some have done the analysis and they're saying, hey, you know what, we've thought this through and we want to put in LEDs. And this is what, this is our plan, this is how much we want to spend on it, and we can fund, lighting and solar and lots of different projects. We have a lot of flexibility in our funding as well. The only thing that we can't fund is with state energy program funding, which is the majority of this, is research and development. So we can do deployment projects, feasibility studies, pilot projects, kind of framed up like that. But over the last few years, this is kind of where we're at. Let's see. We have a municipal energy efficiency technical assistance program, and that was it was seeded by U.S. Department of Energy funding to basically be able to help municipalities with their energy efficiency needs and technical assistance. I'll show you, I'm going to pull up one of the reports for that and get a little bit more into that. Partner, that's why I'm here to talk to you. I would highly recommend you give me a call if you're interested afterwards to have individual conversations and see how we can help you individually. And then again, it's about providing the necessary technical, analytical, and objective resources. Like we want to be able to provide you with objective point of view on what you're working on it. And we're not going to recommend you go one way or another, but we want to say, hey, this is what we're seeing in this field, and this is what we're seeing for savings, and this is what we're seeing for costs. Just being able to see the playing ground and be able to share that with you. So with that, I'm going to jump into programs and resources, which I think you'll be very interested in. Are there any questions up to this point? Okay, going to make it easy on me. So our state energy program, I talked about a little bit. This is funded by the U.S. Department of Energy. We receive $900,000 to $1.2 million annually. It's a formula fund based on cold weather days, population, and another thing that I can never remember. But basically, we get that funding, a portion of that funding funds staff in the office, but we try to limit how much we take from that, that range of funding, and then we try to push a majority of that out for grants. So our community investment grants, a majority of that funding comes from this pot. And really, the state energy program goes to all of the state energy offices. So every state energy office in the country gets funding from the government for work locally. And the idea is to just build upon our mission and vision and deploy programs and initiatives related to everything I already talked about. And the funding, just to kind of show you the way it flows, is we get a congressional appropriation. It'll go to the state program, the funding goes to states, and then the state energy offices basically decide on what they want to fund. And again, there's a lot of flexibility in it. There's a limited funding. There's a lot of flexibility in what we can do. So those are just kind of some of the things that people work on, or the states work on. So we break up our funding into three major categories: stakeholder assessment and policy development, sector support and market development, as well as data-driven leadership and energy assurance. And so stakeholder assessment and policy development, our community grant programs, or planning and implementation grants, fall under that. We have our technical assistance program, where we're helping municipalities, states, schools, and businesses. Workforce development is a big deal, and we'll be working a lot more on that, making sure that the workforce is available and ready to meet the needs of a very expanding renewable energy sector, as well as the traditional energy, making those jobs, as people are going into the workforce or transitioning the workforce, making energy jobs palatable and exciting for people, which I don't think that's, what we think of when we think of energy jobs. Stakeholder engagement, and then we try to host an annual meeting every year, the Wisconsin Energy Innovation Summit. Because of the transition right now, we normally host it, we're going to host it in October, but we might or might not be moving in October. So we're just going to wait and sit tight on that, and then once everything shakes out, we'll figure that out. And certainly would love to have as many of you there as possible